Thank you. I now recognize Representative Meuser from the great state of Pennsylvania for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman very much. Gentlemen, ladies, thanks for being with us. It's always enjoyable, it seems, to talk about football, particularly in the middle of the day or late morning on a Wednesday. But these are some pretty important subjects we've got here. And the idea of us having congressional legislation seems to be agreed upon by all. So when I conclude, I'm going to ask you, who's got the plan? You clearly are all the specialists in this and have great experiences and tenure. But think about that a little bit. Who else do we go to for gaining and developing and creating the right plan moving forward? Because the thing is that I think no one disagrees that a student athlete. I have always felt, I mean, from the days of Tim Tebow, for instance, right? He was great in college, he made it to the NFL, but the idea that he couldn't get a Nike contract, whatever it might be, never made any sense to me. My son actually plays at Bucknell, 1A. They have a good time. But the idea that they couldn't use their name for, say, a local business or car dealership, perhaps, to help promote, never really made any sense, kind of having a side job. But this has gone further, right? Now we have alumni basically coming together, in my understanding, putting millions of dollars into a pot, where some schools maybe tens of thousands, where one is tens of millions, and doling that out to gain the best quarterbacks, the best team possible, with contractors that really have no regulations or jurisdiction, where some states are putting themselves in the middle of it. So first question is, do you think we've got a problem just with that amount of money going for this purpose, yet the revenues from the football cannot be used, for the football programs cannot be used? Would that funding from generous donors, or donors who just want to win football games perhaps, but either way, would it be going elsewhere? That's question number one. I mean, is it being pulled from other funding that would build a library, perhaps, Mr. Donati?
Absolutely. To answer your question directly, the money that's being put into NIL is there are donors making a decision of how they're going to best support the university, whether it's through supporting NIL with the student athletes or funding a building or a scholarship. And so we're seeing that in real time, and we're having to, as athletic directors, having to make adjustments of our budget accordingly.
Okay, so that's a big yes. Mr. Smith, sorry, my glasses aren't working so great here. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think one thing we have to recognize is that there's over 350 Division I schools in this country, and the diversity in how they're financed is significantly different. Many of the schools that we're blessed to have in our country who educate our children, the athletic departments are funded through the university general funds or student fees. They're not like Ohio State. We generate $250 million externally through our revenue generation plan, which covers our expenses. And we contribute dollars back to the institution. So we're a different beast. Part of the realities is that we're listening to comments about places that don't do it right. We educate our student athletes. We do not have the same issues relative to fundraising that my colleague mentioned, because our donors are going to support us at the end of the day. So the diversity in our business is significant. And so I think we need to recognize that and pay attention to that, because in my view, the plan is represented in some of the bills that have been offered. I support my carriage bill significantly. But there's other plans that the NCAA is working on that I think need to be put in place to allow more institutional involvement. It gets to the Title IX question. Yeah. At the end of the day, I'm going to make sure we meet Title IX. That's not some outside entity that's going to make that determination. So it's a long speech to your question.
I appreciate it.
But that's reality.
I'll just go to Mr. Toretta real fast, same question.
I would just say, under the current system, the universities are getting free labor still because the additional cash is coming from boosters to the players and the student athletes. So I think that's where, is it a percentage of revenue to the student athletes? But under the current system, really, the student athlete doesn't cost the university anymore.
I'm out of time. I'd like to follow up and ask if what problems are created from that, some unintended consequences, but I yield back, Mr. Chairman.